I would like to welcome you all to the 2021 SMART4SEA Forum. I would like to thank all the participants, the sponsors, the speakers, and those who are viewing this event on YouTube. In these unprecedented times, we have the pandemic, which is a black swan event. However, the pandemic has acted as a digital accelerator. And since the outbreak, we witnessed a rapid migration of digital technologies in all industries and sectors. The speed of change is unprecedented, and we expect to see some developments in our shipping market. So in this panel, with the topic of digital shipping, we're going to discuss how the pandemic transformed shipping business, what are the barriers and drivers for digital transformation, what does the industry need to start doing differently in order to prepare for a smarter and more digital future. We're going to discuss where we are in the change curve, and mega trends in technology, Internet of Things, connectivity, big data, analytics, and so on and so forth. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to the participants we have in this panel. We have Mr. Ronald Spithout. Ronald is the president of Inmarsat Maritime. We have Georgios Plevrakis, who is the director of global sustainability for ABS. We have Tom Evensen, who is the regional category manager, hull performance for Jotun. We have Vikrant Sharma, who is lead business development digital officer, SIPDC for iOS OP. We have Stavros Papageorgiou, who is the operational technology and energy manager and management representative for energy management system for Latsko, part of the Latsis group of companies. And last but not least, Panos Fotossopoulos, who is the chief digital officer for Ocean King. All of these stakeholders will bring to this discussion their point of view and their angle of approach. Now, I would like to start right away. I would like to congratulate Ronald Spithout, who was the recipient of the Leadership Award. And I would like to ask Ronald to start with his keynote presentation. Ronald, the floor is yours. I'd just like to ask you to share your screen in order to start the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm very honored to have received this award this morning. Never thought that would happen, but I would like to thank everyone again who participated in that election. I'm really flattered. I'm asked to give you guys the opening speech, a couple of minutes opening the day, and therefore I will keep this high over, taking the big themes that are keeping us busy all day and hoping that they function as a kind of framework for the discussions later on. So I only have a couple of slides, and the title is Digitalization Uncovered. So I hope you can see my slides well. First of all, a little stop with Fleet Xpress 10,000 installations. You probably saw that all in the press. I would like to thank all of you, because I know many of our customers are part of this event. Thank you all of joining us in making this platform work for everyone. So a lot of customers got it on board. We started in 2016. And from a flying start in the second half of 2016, we made it to more than 10,000 installations by now. We see not only our customers choosing for it, but we see a lot of partners. What it does, it drives the diversity. We see distribution partners, but also antenna manufacturers, rack builders. We see shipyards. We see a lot of this is coming into line fit arena. So I'd like to thank them all. And for us, it is an endorsement to go to the next step. And that is what today we'll also start to discuss. This is about platforms. It's not about VSATs. It's not about connectivity itself. It is about having a platform that enables digitalization, that allows you to split your business from your IoT, split your IoT from your crew, and take care that everything you take on board in the form of applications and internet usage is getting there in a secure, cyber secure and safe way. So we are moving full steam ahead after the 10,000. We will start calling this Fleet Xpress 2.0, making everyone aware that it's about uniform platforms. That is the key in this industry going forward. You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time when a new regulation or a new system or a new IoT stream or a new demand is coming up. You want uniformity because that is driving efficiency. So there's no way around the pandemic. And you see from, if you see me from my hair, that when we do this event now, that the barbers are already closed for more than 2 months in London. The pandemic is gripping around everywhere, and not in the last place on the crew. So looking back at when the pandemic started, which is now about a year ago, the major issues were to solve were on the crew, right? Providing telemedicine, providing crew hotlines for mental health support, providing access to the charities so that we could support people at sea and not only in the port via the charities. But in the meantime, we thought, well, what is this pandemic doing to us? So we launched a survey. We called it Welfare 2.0. And halfway the pandemic, what we got out of this is that there is a massive lack of investment in structural solutions for crew, which is one of the big lessons that we took from the pandemic. We know that the crew is extremely hard hit by the fact that travel is restricted and that they couldn't be refreshed or move around and the likes of. But moreover, we see that there is a structural lack of investment and on how to serve the crew on board. And this is not only giving the crew internet to do social stuff, right? It is a recognition that the crew is an important asset that needs to be protected while they are at sea. So we see some lights, and it's good to download that Welfare 2.0. You can take it from our website. But there is a big need for personalization of connectivity for the crew. There are already quite a few companies now who start to realize that stress factors are causing errors, and errors are causing loss of assets in whatever way or format. So managing and monitoring the stress factors is a very important activity, which comes with connectivity for the crew and the way they are using that connectivity. But also training, help, support. It is high time. And luckily, we see a lot of application providers stepping in here. It is high time that we are using our technology for mental, social, and physical well-being of the crew. Because if we do that, we protect our assets. And that is one of the big learning points that we got from the pandemic halfway, that a lot of the features that we are developing over our platform are there to support this. So if you're interested, download that survey. You can get it free from our website. What the pandemic did as well is it accelerated anything remote, which sounds like an open door. But again, we did this survey together with Informa from Lloyd's List. And of course, we see from inside out, we see that the number of gigabytes consumed per day have doubled over the last couple of months. And that is not only social stuff, right? This is important, an important recognition that connectivity has been accelerated by the pandemic. And if you take that digitalization uncovered white paper, and I have it here on my phone, I downloaded it in about a minute, you see a lot of your colleagues, whether they are ship owners or ship operators, or even ship agents and the likes, you see them testifying how they use digitalization on board of their vessels. And you see an important trend shift where it started purely from cost-saving perspective. Now it moves much deeper into the smart solutions. We had a myriad of proof of concepts at the early part of the pandemic that were all around efficiency and cost saving. And we saw that paused for a while when the pandemic gripped around. And then in the second half of the year, we saw an enormous surge of anything else. Because apparently there are a lot of stakeholders around the industry that suddenly realized that they have a lot of physical touch points with the vessels and with the operations, and they all are in need to change the way they work into something virtual. So there's a massive need for real-time data and a remote anything. So I would say, to get the ideas, download this one and read it, because it gives you valuable insight of which directions your colleagues are going. But if the pandemic did anything, as far as we could see, it is that it lowered the resistance to change the way we work. The pandemic became a magnifying glass to look around sharply and implement new ways of working in shipping. And we saw that coming before the pandemic, but it accelerated massively as we saw it over the last 6 to 8 months. Of course, the big topics stay what they are. And I put them on the slide here. That has not changed since the pandemic. So if something changed on sustainability, which was, of course, one of the biggest topics that we had before it all hit us, right? If it changed anything, it is that the sustainability items and this, the decarbonization and the zero emission topics are now just spot on in the middle of the economic operational area of the ship manager. You see insurers and bankers who already a year ago signed the Poseidon principles to invest and refinance only in greener vessels. But you now also see charterers uniting themselves in something like they call the Sea Cargo Charter. And you see now already day rates differing depending on how green the vessel is. Now that may be a given, but it also means that things will continue to be asked for monitoring, for management, for making it sure and visible to all these stakeholders about the state of these vessels. So sustainability within a year came to the heart of our operational economics. That is a change. Then on digitalization itself, of course, there are all kinds of industry stakeholders, but also ports who are starting to weigh in how to get data to and from a vessel in a uniform way. Regulatory compliance, environmental safety needs to be monitored. That is all hinting at platforms that are uniform. So also that became an operational issue. Now, safety and security, there's no doubt one of the biggest items. I started my presentation with it. It is also environmental safety, but using digitalization for smarter safety is something we didn't see. In my earlier slide, I hinted at a lack of investment for the crew, but I also believe there's a structural lack in investment to use technology to make the operations safer. We have now a couple of trials going with something we call automated safety. Remember that GMDSS is about 30 years old. It is using a very narrowband store and forward way of giving very relevant safety data whenever a vessel is in distress. We have vessels that are using terabytes per month, right? Why are we not using our technology to make the whole shipping industry much smarter and in an automated way? There are still vessels going down because the fire alarm button isn't being pushed, right? There are still vessels going down because the crew had something else to do than addressing a safety button. So why not automate it? So we now have trials running where if a vessel goes out of its parameters in whatever way or format, you can set that yourself, then not only will there be pre-warnings going out to where you want it, but also wideband real-time data is in parallel transferred to whoever needs it. It will shorten reaction times, and it will also give you situational awareness in times of safety. So we believe that we should use safety and security to drive a much more wideband solution than GMDSS only is. So that is what we have proof of concepts for, and I'm sure that in the next year or two, you will see it accelerated. Of course, cybersecurity, you all remember IMO 2021, it is 2021 today, right? So if you want to get your guidelines from our website, please download it, but it is not something that is coming, it is something from now. So my conclusion is that the big topics haven't changed. pandemic accelerated our awareness to do things different. And from our perspective, being a platform provider, I think there is a need for common platforms, common data. We are in all these committees that see if we can standardize the stuff, but find a platform that gives you uniformity, that gives you separation between crew and business, between IoT and safety, and make sure that you don't have to add on stuff every time you're getting something new on board. Now, my last slide, because I like to keep it short as requested. My last slide is about this ecosystem. So I started with 10,000 Fleet Xpress vessels. On itself, that is driving the expansion and the diversity of our ecosystem massively. So a lot of players that historically were not interested in digitalization on board of the vessels are suddenly finding it very interesting. So yards, OEMs, classification societies, charities, insurers, charters, banks, they all have something that they like to virtualize within our industry over here. So everyone is looking around for new ideas. And if you look at digital services on board of vessels, that will surely explode in value in the coming few years. But also there's a realization that the ones that are making money out of this 5 to 10 years from now are the ones that don't exist today. Because we see that a lot of the brilliant ideas on how to reform and improve this industry and making it more efficient and long-lasting are coming from startups. So we continue to look around to find those startups. And it is, of course, like a needle in a haystack. But the only thing that we could do to at least tease them to present themselves is have an innovation challenge. We did one this year where the topic was indeed technology for crew welfare. And we had a winner that we have now in a proof of concept with a Shell tanker vessel. And we will continue to do so because it is our vast belief that we should nurture the ones that are coming from the colleges, the students that start from themselves, because you're 100% sure that 40% or 45% came out of our survey of the digital service business in 5 to 10 years from now is being generated by the ones that start today. So be open for that. And if anything, the pandemic brought us is that we started to be open for these new ideas. That is my keynote speaker for now. I hope it gives you some ingredients to have very good discussions later on today. So I'd like to give it back to Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ronald. Thank you for the well-rounded, let's say, presentation of where we start. We'll move on with George Plevrakis. George, the floor is yours. You have to share your screen.
Excellent. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this great opportunity to discuss the emerging landscape, emerging trends, and how digital tools can actually help our industry achieve its targets. A few words about who we are. I represent today the ABS Global Sustainability. We are a team that has centers situated across the globe. We have a center in Singapore, a center in Copenhagen, and a center in Houston. Our center in Athens was launched almost a year ago. The focus of the team is to identify how we support the global industry in its efforts to achieve excellence in the Sustainable Development Goals that have been put forth by IMO and have been adopted by the United Nations. Looking at which of these goals exhibit high relevance and high impact on the operations of a shipping company, and how this can be translated into support, into actions, and to implementations to achieve sustainability excellence. Having said that, decarbonization and digital enhancements are in the heart and soul of this effort. And I tend to start these presentations by exploring the emerging landscape. And I would like also to connect with Ronald's presentation earlier, where he said, I was keeping notes actually, that the big topics stayed as they are during the pandemic. And in fact, what we have seen over the last year, over 2020, is a shift towards a discussion around decarbonization that was ramped up in an accelerated manner, specifically after the course of the last summer. What do we have ahead of us as an industry is a landscape that has many aspects and many elements that come into play, and operators must take those elements into consideration when they are creating their own strategy. And creating a decarbonization strategy is at the heart and soul of achieving a competitive advantage for those companies. Now, again, it was mentioned earlier about the fact that we have different trajectories, different initiatives, different measures that are going to be implemented. If you look at what the global regulatory landscape has in place, we're talking about the implementation of a design index, a design measure by 2023, and then the adoption of a decarbonization trajectory in the form of the IMO CII that will lead us to the target of 2030. But it's not only that that is going to be implemented. And Ronald mentioned earlier that we see initiatives that are coming from the market, not from the regulatory part, but market initiatives in the form of schemes that are put in place by the financiers through the Poseidon principles, or the charterers themselves, the sea cargo charterers. These are implementing and adopting a decarbonization trajectory that will actually lead to certain targets in the future. And let's not forget that there are also other regional initiatives that are going to be, or probably going to be implemented. I tend to mention here the possibility of the introduction of shipping in the emission trading system. All those trajectories are going to be implemented and have to be followed by the global fleet and individual ships until we reach a certain decarbonization milestone, which lies ahead of us in 2030. Now, the mechanics of how to achieve this, how to be constantly aligned with all those trajectories, how to constantly improve. The mechanics of decarbonization have two basic elements in place. They have the benchmarking and the improvement options. Benchmarking a vessel against itself, against sister vessels, against the global fleet, between different trade routes, different designs, different operational conditions to find out which are the bad players, which are the best players in one's fleet, and then identify what are the improvement options. In the heart and soul of this exercise, you have pure engineering work. But pure engineering work will not be completed if it doesn't have the proper digital tools and digital enhancements, so that we can have this in place, so that we can have a proper benchmarking, and we can have an efficient and effective sensitivity analysis or exploration of the different improvement options. On one hand, you need a proper monitoring tool, and I would agree with the previous speaker. Ronald mentioned the necessity of now transitioning to a platform-based approach. And you need also tools that will help you, digital tools that you will enhance the engineering work in order to arrive at the proper improvement options for a specific case. That would require tools that take into consideration high frequency data, that perform analytics, that have in place the right simulation approach, so that you can arrive at the optimal solution for the right purpose. And when we're talking about the necessity of having a platform to monitor the data and do the proper benchmarking, one has to take into consideration the fact that this emerging landscape has a more complex now, a more complicated necessity for monitoring those data streams. We're talking about major data streams in the form of the AER, the EOI, and the design approach that either feed into subsets of data or are fed by subsets of data. And these also create different reporting lines that the operator has to follow and has to report to. And in effect, creating a more complicated environment where the vessel and the operator has to operate and function. You have the regulatory aspect, but you also have now industry incentives that are coming into play and will actually ask for the operator and the vessel to report different calculations of performance, of environmental aspects of the operation, even on the how you manage the assets and how you actually perform against different schemes. For this reason, and also keeping track of time, what we initiated earlier this year was the launching of our environmental monitor, the ABS environmental monitor. That is a platform. It is a monitor that tracks all KPIs that are related to the environmental performance of the operation of the ship, and also provides the required benchmarking and trending for the operations by looking at and aggregating historical data, and also providing the alignment with the different decarbonization trajectory. In this case, you see what you see on your screen is the alignment with the Poseidon principles. This particular tool can also be introduced in can also introduce the company in a more broader view of its ESG and sustainability reporting requirements, so that this is linked also with the ESG and sustainability reports that are now being introduced also in our industry. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, there is the necessity, and I agree, to start transitioning into a platform, into a more platform-related approach. And for this reason, this particular tool, this environmental monitor, can also be embedded in what we have also launched a couple of months ago, what we call My Digital Fleet, which provides an overview of an operator's fleet, looking at the environmental regulatory database, providing safety management system excellence input. It provides location-based environmental insights, and the most critical aspect of that, it supports in the 360-degree of fleet risk management. Having said that, and keeping track of time, I think I made it to the 10-minute requirement. I would like to thank you for your attention and looking forward for the discussion around these elements.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, George. Now let's move on to Tom. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. So good morning all, and many thanks again for giving me the honor to present to this esteemed audience. My name is Tom Evensen, and I work for the coatings manufacturer Jotun, who by now do far more than merely produce and sell paints. Hence the title of my presentation. Call it artificial intelligence, we call it fuel savings. Now, the shipping industry are facing increased challenges related to biofouling. The fourth IMO greenhouse gas study disclosed that biofouling alone accounts for the emission of around 83 million tons of CO2 and 2 million tons of other greenhouse gases. And this is per year. At a modest average fuel price set at $400 per ton, the industry cost of excess fuel consumption is around $11 billion per year. And in addition comes cost of delays, legal fees, hull cleanings, possible damage to the anti-fouling system, and so on. In addition to the above, biofouling also contributes to the transmigration of non-indigenous species, affecting biodiversity and triggering staggering cleanup costs. Now, there are forthcoming international regulations. George touched on this in his presentation, but we all know that out of the recent MEPC 75 came the Energy Efficiency Index for existing ships, the Operational Carbon Intensity Indicator, and both will include a rating scheme as well as the Enhanced Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan, with mandatory content approval and subsequent audits. And they are all expected to enter into force 1st of January 2023. And then in addition, we see stricter relevant local regulations. We all know the New Zealand Craft Risk Management Standard. The vessels calling on major ports in New Zealand basically have to be fouling free upon arrival to those ports. We see strict regulations coming in Australia, US, California in particular, as well as major European ports. So how is our industry working to address the biofouling challenge? So one approach is conducting reactive hull cleanings, and this obviously has possible implications. These hull cleanings are very often triggered by monitoring systems, and some actually have periodic based cleanings where when they reach a certain port or a certain time has passed, they basically do a cleaning. Time to decision is often long, and one of the main implications of a reactive cleaning is simply that time to decision, and not the least time to action, is often too long. So the drop in performance is picked up by performance monitoring systems, and due to the nature of most of these systems, performance drop has already existed for quite some time. Hull inspection is arranged for, and additional time passes by, and then eventually one has to find the time and right place to conduct a reactive hull cleaning. These cleanings are often complex operations, they're quite costly. There's an underlying risk of potentially damaging the anti-fouling system. There's an inherent risk of spreading aquatic invasive species. There are health and safety concerns, and one needs to collect debris to avoid the possibility of increasing pollutants and to reduce the biosecurity risk. So we now have ISO 19030 measuring changes in hull and propeller performance over time. Now, this methodology is in large extent based on a methodology that Jotun brought to market more than 10 years ago. So we rely on power, RPM, speed through water, and other key indicators in a high frequency, 15-second interval in many cases, and then over time analyze the development over time compared to vessels' own performance. So benchmark is set in year one, and then it's compared over time. And this is actual data from a bulk carrier in a typical worldwide bulk carrier trade. She's basically all over, and the performance is quite poor. In this case, it represents an estimated market average performance loss, which is 5.9% speed loss over time for a 5-year dry docking interval. One can clearly see the cleanings which have been conducted. There are 4 of those in the 5-year period. It does bring the performance up somewhat, but shortly after you see a steep drop in performance, and this basically discloses that you have a non-functional anti-fouling system on the vessel, or the anti-fouling system has been severely damaged by the cleaning operation itself. This vessel would require close to 20% additional power in order to compensate the incurred speed loss. Obviously, in addition, cost of underwater hull cleanings and additional complexity has to be taken into consideration. So what if there was a solution available in the market that offered shipping operators a prediction of just the right time to proactively clean the hull? It would offer means to an end in terms of always ensuring a clean hull. It would provide operators with unlimited idle days, reduced CO2 emissions, market-leading hull performance, minimized risk of spreading aquatic invasive species, and hull state verification capabilities 24/7. Now, Jotun have introduced proactive cleaning with hull skating. And I would like to address the fundamental difference from what we are doing with hull skating as versus a reactive cleaning. So a reactive cleaning goes without saying is reactive and has these implications which were listed earlier. What we do is proactive cleaning. This offers an unbeatable environmental footprint, minimal performance loss. There are no debris contributing to transmission of invasive aquatic species. It offers best hull performance and full operational flexibility. Vessels could basically sit idle 364 days in a year and then sail off on the last day with an absolute clean hull. It offers high-resolution hull state verification capabilities at any time, uploaded into an encrypted cloud service available for operators and also regulators in case hull state has to be documented. The hull skater comes as part of a solution we have called Hull Skating Solutions. So we have a tailor-made coating, a self-polishing antifouling based on latest silyl methacrylate technology, which is custom-made to work hand in hand with the hull skater and endure these high-frequency proactive cleanings. It comes with a predictive condition monitoring, which we will touch on the next couple of slides. The hull skater itself, always on board, a very advanced piece of robotics, which is remotely operated by Jotun personnel sitting in a growing number of operational centers all around the world, offering us 24/7 operational capabilities. And obviously backed by the usual strong Jotun performance contracts. Now, Jotun being a large manufacturer of coatings and paint, we might have good ideas, but we do acknowledge that we lack the skills in the field of advanced robotics. So we teamed up with Kongsberg Maritime as a technology partner, in addition to Swedish-Norwegian engineering company Semcon, who have developed the hull skater itself. DNVGL have offered advice on regulatory aspects as well as conducting hazard identification workshops. Telenor is our global roaming partner related to communications on the unit itself. And the shipping partners should be known to all of you. We have worked very closely with Wallenius Wilhelmsen, Maersk Line out of Copenhagen, as well as Berge Bulk out of Singapore. So how does this solution work? At dry docking, we apply this special paint. We install a launch and recovery ramp for the hull skater. Vessel set sail and our operations center takes over, following the vessel, looking at the oceanographic dimension that she's exposed to. We look at the operational dimension, collecting high resolution AIS data. And once an alarm goes off in the operation center, we conduct a proactive inspection of the hull, and we're extremely fast. We can cover approximately 10,000 square meters in less than 1 hour when conducting these
Tom, you have less than 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. I'll speed up. And then if we find anything, we would then obviously then remove the fouling on the go. so to say. So I'll basically round off by looking into the digital part of the delivery, which is the proactive condition monitoring and really the juicy stuff and close to artificial intelligence. So what we do, I mentioned we collect high resolution AIS data. And speaking of big data, we have 8.4 billion records on file. So all historical AIS data from roughly 80,000 vessels. We couple this by using data fusion, where we add on the idling data, distance from shore, bathymetry, location, and so on. And then we collect oceanographic data from publicly available sources. NASA, European Space Association, ESA, Copernicus, and so forth, where we analyze chlorophyll, phytoplankton, iron, sulfates, and so on. Good expression for fouling intensity. And this algorithm, which is over time self-calibrating. We have created a feedback loop where the video collected from the hull skater are matched with the data collected on the oceanographic dimension. So we believe that we have come very close to a system which will offer operators the perfect timing for conducting a proactive hull inspection, followed by a proactive hull cleaning. And thank you very much, Mr. Plevrakis. Thank you for listening in, and I'm going to stop my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you. We have to move on with Captain Vikrant. You have to unmute yourself as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So please let me know if you can see the slide.
Yeah, it's okay.
Right, gentlemen, I'm Captain Vikrant Sharma. I'm representing a company, Ship Data Center, which is a subsidiary of Class NK, Nippon Kaiji Kyokai, one of the classification societies. So today our focus will be IOS-OP, which is acronym for Internet of Ships Open Platform. And the main purpose of IOS-OP is to ensure data collection, distribution, and utilization in a fair and transparent manner on the platform. Why? Just allow me to give you a brief background about IOS-OP. It was established in 2015 by Class NK, and it's a separate entity, even though subsidiary. The intention was that by collecting the data generated by the vessels and by analyzing that data which is coming from the VDR, which is from the navigation data, and by collecting it onshore and making it available for use by the entire maritime industry, we can improve the safety and efficiency of the vessel. That was the intent back in 2015, and our intention was to focus on the big data analysis at a later stage. So Ship DC is a neutral body. We are like a non-commercial entity, not for profit. So we are not getting onto the analysis part or on the commercial side. We are focusing on collecting the data under certain standards and ensuring that it is transferred into fair and transparent manner. So once Ship DC was established, next focus was how to collect the data. So an IOS-OP services started on the Ship DC. As I said, IOS-OP is the Internet of Ships Open Platform. And the services were mainly focusing on key factors of data standardization. This I'm talking about 2017 around. This talks about collecting data as per ISO standards 1984748, data distribution, which means how the data will be distributed, who is the data owner, what are the roles of the data collector, what are the roles of data user, and data utilization. And the intent is that as you move forward, we realize that data will become key component, and therefore transparency and fairness is going to be important factor. In 2018, an IOS-OP consortium was launched, and the main intent was that it should be handled by industry, not by individuals. So consortium was formed for the maintenance of the IOS-OP common rules and the promotion of data utilization. So IOS-OP has two components, the cooperative domain and the competitive domain. Cooperative domain is having common rules, which I'm going to cover a couple of slides from now. And the competitive domain is where the competition will be based on the know-how of each player. So if you're a data analytic company, you would like to create a new data solution, which will be accessible to the maritime industry, and that's how the business case can be looked into. Right. So moving on, one of the key component is when we started ISOP, that what are the roles and responsibilities of the different stakeholders. So if you see, Ship DC is right in the center, and our focus has been always that we are a data center with a secure data storage. We will provide access control, who will collect the data, who will release the data, and we will provide the RESTful APIs, which will be distributed. It will be uniform API, which can be given to the solution providers. Then there is another stakeholder called platform providers. These are the sales companies which will be providing the shipboard data server on ships, and they'll be collecting data as per ISO standards. So we are promoting ISO standards because that is going to reduce the redundancy of the data. It will also help to have a common data silos in the platform. This silos can be accessible to the solution providers, provided the data owner give access to. Then there is a third player, platform user. These are one of the key players. They are ship manager owners, but they are the data owners. Now that's important because we did make a definition of the data owners who pays for the expense of the data collection. Now this was a definition which was accepted at the ISOP consortium, and consortium today we have got about 60 members. These are ship manufacturers, ship owners, engine manufacturers, ICT companies, so on and so forth. The fourth player is a solution provider. These are the data analysis company, which are providing different kind of services such as remote maintenance, support, or performance analysis report. The solution users are some platform users who will use the same of their data into analytical form now, and they are the users of the solution providers. Finally, we also have data buyers. These are the companies which are now focusing on their own product for collecting data. So they buy, or I will say that data transaction is possible through Ship DC, provided the platform user or data owner allows that. So what are the value of ISOP cooperative domain or the competitive domain? At cooperative domain, one of the key value is the data ownership. Clearly it is defined who is owning the data. Data governance, it means what are the data access rights data owner will decide. Data owner can decide to whom they can send the data, how much they can send the data, and who will be controlling their data. Fairness and transparency is also important because this clearly allows the smooth flow of data from the ship to the shore. Also, it allows that who are the participants who are using the data without approval from the data ownership, data cannot be accessed by the third party. And this will be all happening on the Ship DC, which is, as I said, is a neutral body. So this is our job to ensure that the fairness is maintained. Next, data center services. This is what Ship DC role is. We are trying to minimize cost because there will not be redundancy of data. There will not be extra cost of having multiple data collection servers on board, and the data storage has not to be done by the data owner on their own cloud. It can be done on the Ship DC. Data portability allows the flexibility to the data owners to look for the multiple solution providers. There'll be no barrier to change because the same data silo, which is standardized, can be accessed by the multiple solution providers, provided the solution provider is member of Ship DC. So competitive domain, eventually, as I said, something we're looking at the data-driven innovation, something which has been told by my colleagues that as you move forward, it's not about just data, it's more about having a platform, having uniformity, and also to ensure that data has been used. Therefore, there has to be data tools available for optimization. Moving forward, key question, or I will say one of the key deliverables of the ISOP is clearly define who is the data owner. So for us, platform user is the company or an entity which pays for the cost of the data. And if the ship owner is not the platform user, then there has to be condition where the ship owner will delegate platform user as the data owner for the purpose of ISOP. And there are a few conditions which has to be met. One of the condition is that who will bear the cost of the equipment, who will bear the cost of the communication or the operation or maintenance. As long as there is a clear understanding before the joining, then a template will be signed and it is clearly demarcated who is the data owner for the purpose of ISOP for collection of data.
Captain Vikrant, you have less than 1 minute.
All right. Okay. All right. So moving forward, these are the common rules. And finally, as of January, we have so many participants ISOP has done. Finally, our goal is to ensure that there is an economic rationality. There are safe operation on ships. ISOP can be used for reducing the carbon emissions and improving ESG scores, reducing, ensuring the decarbonization. Eventually, it is a platform where the collaboration and the competitiveness both has to work together to ensure that we go to the next stage. Thank you. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can stop sharing the screen.
Yes.
Okay. And we'll move on with Stavros Papageorgiou. Stavros, the floor is yours.
Καλημέρα, Apostole. Hello to everyone. Firstly, thank you for your kind invitation to include me in this great panel and give me the opportunity to discuss these emerging trends in shipping industry, as well as to present you and discuss with you how a shipping owner and also technical manager of its own vessels has decided to face these challenges and move forward. So I'm sharing my screen. Please tell me if you can see my screen.
Okay, it's okay. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Firstly, let me introduce the company. As you all know, it is owned by a Latsis family. It's a traditional Greek ship owner family with almost 70 years of experience. We have 3 head offices in Monaco, London, and Athens. And currently, we are operating a fleet of 29 vessels, consisted from LR2, MR tankers, and LPGs. Currently, we have 8 new buildings under construction, including 2 LNGs that will be the first LNGs that we have as a company. All of our charters and customers are oil majors. I'm responsible in the Department of Operational Technology and Energy Management, and amongst others, I've studied physics with experience in research in environmental emissions and hydroacoustics. Also, I have worked in the IT industry, and I hold a lot of masters in these sectors. The department that I'm the manager of has established 3 years ago. It is consisted of a team of scientists, naval architecture and marine engineers, and data analysts. And the main responsibilities that we have is the hull performance monitoring, the energy consumption and emissions performance monitoring, the main engines and diesel generators performance monitoring, the new vessel energy efficient technologies, the plan and condition-based maintenance strategy and analysis, maintenance software enhancement, the supervisory control and data acquisition systems, and we are the performance center administrators that we have recently established within our company, and I will present you later. Why I started with that? Because I believe that the most important factor is the human factor in order to implement all these technologies that we're discussing today. And of course, which is the drive? The drive is the new regulatory framework. As George Plevrakis mentioned earlier, MEPC 75 has adopted some new indicators, the carbon intensity indicator and the emissions existing indicator. So some guidelines I have discussed about the calculation of indicators, the vessel's rating, and the vessel's surveillance certification. It is something emerging for the shipping companies and also has given to us a timeline of these regulations, which means that from the next year, all these regulations about the carbon intensity, the EEXI, the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan will come in effect. And of course, the goal is to develop a carbon intensity code that will come in effect in 5 years from now. That's why, and this is the main reason that we have to use new technologies. And adapt ourselves in these new challenges and new era. The projects that we have decided to implement and we have already started 1 year ago, firstly is the supervisor control and data acquisition project. We use different systems for hull and engine performance, as well as for the main engine and diesel generator performance. We have installations across the fleet for data acquisition systems in order to identify the power decomposition due to the hull degradation, defective sensor equipment, or some early service needs for problem. Also, we monitor the OT system, the network segregation, security monitoring for operational technology systems, and the alarm monitoring of the OT systems. Weather routing. Weather routing is a new project for us, and we have recently adapted some new providers. We have pilot projects using big data from US NOAA. So we use and choose 2 different routes for each vessel. We evaluate the actual performance with a projected one. We keep records. And when the vessel has a passage from one route, then we evaluate its performance by comparing the previous one. I believe that since weather is something that we cannot forecast every time, it's something very important for us in order, firstly, to have important savings and to reduce the CO2 emissions, and also to have a better operation, commercial operation, of our vessels. The trim optimization project, we use again big data, and we perform recording of the actual draft per voyage's leg. We keep these records with the vessel stream per vessel, and we compare it with the actual performance. We use data, big data again from USA for that. And this is something that is also in combination with the weather routing provider. The remote operations and performance center, we use a supervisory control and data acquisition system that collects data from all the acquisition systems that we have in the different fleets of our vessels. We use a specific programming language that combines data from all these different systems. Of course, this is not very easy since when you retrieve a signal from a different sensor from different provider, you have to adjust and normalize it. Using artificial intelligence platform, we can execute commands and have automatic notification, automatic actions. Of course, we can identify a network breach and also have an automatic requisition of a spare. Our aim is not only to monitor security breaches or problems, but also to automate our work and save time also from our people in our office. It's a 24/7 control room. Its official name is Remote Operations and Vessel Performance Center. We use it for data collection and process from the performance engineers of my department. And we have a daily KPIs monitoring. We give direct instructions in the vessels. We have also remote visual operations using satellite link connections and wireless industrial cameras. And this is the next project that I would like to discuss with you. We have acquired a platform for remote operations, as well as specific cameras with ATEX technology. They are thermal cameras, and we can remotely attend and inspect a vessel. Of course, this is not only for an internal troubleshooting procedure. Our vessels can do remote vetting inspections or remote class surveys. We have started the deployment of a Wi-Fi network in the engine room and the deck. Of course, this is something very complex as it needs a detailed radio survey. And we install these microwave antennas within the engine room, within the engine control room or the rudder room. Of course, in the wings of the bridge, behind the funnel. And in some cases, we need to deploy a Wi-Fi camera in the forecastle. That's why we can use optical communication in order to retrieve the signal from the bridge. This is something very important for us, as we save time. Firstly, when we have a problem, we can in real time see and inspect and help the crew in order to have a real-time troubleshooting, and also save time from our class surveys or other remote inspections.
Stavros, you have less than a minute.
Okay, yeah, and I'm finishing now. The last one is the condition-based maintenance project. Now we have finished evaluation of 4 solutions with hardware and software, and we plan to do vibration, ultrasound, and infrared analysis. We have an advanced software with relevant sensors and measurement devices. We can identify problems, for example, cracks in the tanks, or trends from ongoing problematic conditions. So again, we can use big data from data acquisition systems, but this is not for monitoring only, but in order to proceed in a new maintenance system and leave the planned maintenance system. Thank you very much for your time. I believe that I am on time, Apostole.
Yeah, okay. Now we have our last presentation panel. Okay. We have Panos Todosopoulos. Panos, welcome to this panel. The floor is yours. You have 8 minutes.
Thank you, Apostole.
You have 8 minutes. Maybe I'll give you a couple of minutes if you need to conclude the presentations, which I'm sure it will be entertaining. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I guess you can see my slides.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be back and speak at the SMART4SEA event. I must say that I have been in the field of digital shipping since approximately 2014. And I remember that in those days, the subject was almost irrelevant, to be honest. There was a hype, I would say, around 2018. I vividly remember Posidonia 2018, where digitalization was the talk of the town at the time. So why am I now talking about digitalization 2.0? Let me start by explaining or justifying the title of my presentation. I think the previous speakers have also added and noted that the pandemic has definitely acted as an accelerator. We've started using digital technologies that we had at hand, but we're not really taking advantage of. In addition, we're starting to see more technology solutions becoming available that go, let's say, well beyond the first wave of simply converting analog data to a digital format. These solutions now offer condition monitoring, optimization, troubleshooting, and things like that. Further, we're also seeing the introduction of new business models. So certain vendors are starting to build on digitalization in order to start selling, for instance, uptime versus simply equipment themselves. No need to repeat again the story about regulations. I think it really is a driver, one more driver for acceleration to introduce digital technologies into the field. I think for the next few years, because of MEPC 75, we will definitely see a lot of evolution. So finally, I believe that for all those reasons, and also for the needs of the ship operators, we're entering digital era 2.0, and we're seeing a more holistic and the need for a more holistic and horizontal analysis on top of the various digital solutions available. Now, in that context, Ocean King, with more than 30 years of serving the Greek shipping community, supporting both new buildings as well as operations with spare parts and services to our customers, in 2019 kicked off a new initiative on digitalization with a vision to support our customers and help them to improve their operations in the digital era, and also assist the companies that we represent to build and promote their digital offerings. Since then, we have formed a number of strategic alliances with what we call best of breed partners from across the world, covering a wide spectrum of needs and services. And we're now capable of offering a one-stop shop, let's say, approach experience for our customers with a broad portfolio of services for digitalization solutions at the vessel level, the engine level, and the machinery level. So now let me use some of these solutions as representatives of what the market offers and what the ship operators can take advantage of. So starting with digitalization at the vessel levels, our partner Hoppe takes care, if you like, of the first part of that, which is really the core sensors needed for vessel performance optimization, as well as the data acquisition system, shaft power meters, mass flow meters, and data collection devices, guarantee the necessary data that you need in order to perform the analysis, which then follows. And once data are collected, and we proceed to the analysis phase, a platform like the Nautilus Labs one, with whom we partner, offers artificial intelligence-based analytics for the core vessel performance, hull fouling, but also advanced tools for the dynamic voyage optimization, things like charter party monitoring and more commercial elements. And with that, it allows the, if you like, breaking down the silos between the various departments within the shipping company, extracting value from the same data set of the high frequency data collected. Now, if we move on one step down the chain on the digitalization of the engine level, here we partner with ABB, who, through the dedicated Tecomar Expert software, allow the customers to quantify, assess, and optimize engine performance for an entire fleet, since it applies to any engine make, any engine type, any fuel, main engine or genset. And the benefits are really twofold in the sense that it offers instant advice to the onboard crew for optimal operating conditions, but also a holistic view to the shore office decision makers for reducing cost and environmental footprint. A little bit attached, but further down the stream is digital monitoring and analytics solution that our partner Geislinger offers for the powertrain. And here we're looking at following the health and the condition of couplings and dampers, which are monitored and analyzed in real time, again, offering on-board advice and troubleshooting, as well as reporting to the shore office. Moving a bit further at the machinery level, through a tool like the one shown by HAT Analytics, one can measure and assess the condition of more or less more than 100 typically rotating machinery on board, things like pumps, fans and blowers, motors, compressors, etc. It's a device, a portable device, which is a vibration meter equipped with a 3-axis accelerometer, and through an embedded diagnostic algorithm can identify early signs of machinery malfunction as well as corrective actions. And finally, I would say on the periphery of all the above, but certainly something which gains traction more and more, we're starting to see, especially after the COVID era, the increase of popularity and use of cloud-based training, cloud-based simulators. And here we partner with a company from India, ARI Simulation, which are heavily investing in that direction for both bridge and navigation simulators, as well as engine rooms, or cargo systems, etc. That allows ship operators or indeed training schools, training academies to reduce the initial capital expense and have very low operational expenses as well for training their people. So in closing, I would say, if I could leave you with some key takeaways, as we said, and hopefully you had the chance to view some of them, we see an increasing number of vertical technology solutions at the vessel, engine, and machinery level, offering value to people on board, the crew, as well as the shore office decision makers. Now, our approach at Ocean King is to look at the big picture, and together with our partners, we follow a more holistic view of all these solutions being under the same umbrella, if you like. I feel we should use the current external triggers, be that the pandemic crisis or the new regulations, as an opportunity to move on the path towards digital shipping. And finally, I would say that digitalization is a journey. And as all journeys, it starts with the first step. So if I were to leave you with one key takeaway, I would say take the first step. And then as a suggestion to the ship operator, I would say pick an area that you feel has the highest needs within your organization or is closer to your DNA, and start from there. We don't need to solve everything and address everything at once, but we can take it step by step. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll leave you to opening the panel discussions, I guess.
Okay. Thank you very much, Panos. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you all for your presentations. I have to, I'm glad with all the plethora of solutions and everything we've seen. And I would also like to ask Stavros and Ronald to join us. I cannot see them. That's okay. Okay. I have to admit, I was at the Inmarsat headquarters late 90s, and we were discussing about the future, and was the level of expectation and level of ambition was there, talking about digitization and technology and everything. It was late 90s, and I'm sure that Ronald will be extremely happy, I would say, because Inmarsat has provided the backbone now. Without Inmarsat, nothing of these could even be realized, because without the communications, and I've seen a plethora of solutions, and now, yes, we're talking about artificial intelligence and big data and so on and so forth. But I can say, as I've been in the industry almost 30 years now, I think we finally arrived to something which is tangible. And at some point we have to, I'm also happy because I've seen the industry moving forward, not due to regulation, as Panos said at the closing of his presentation, but due to real life needs. And that's something, you know, to move the industry forward. It's not only regulation, because in the past, maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago, everything was about regulation. Even the ECDIS and the GMDSS, it was about regulation at some point. But now we see, for example, Wärtsilä was the recipient of the SMART4SEA Training Award for the cloud simulation. This is fantastic because, as Panos correctly pointed out, you don't have to pay a huge amount of CapEx now. You can pay as a service, this cloud simulation, which is good. And now cloud simulation can exist on board ships due to Inmarsat. Because without the communications, nothing of this would have happened. Now, I would like to, as I said, start the discussion, and I would like to roll out my first question. And my first question is about what we have discussed. And I would like to ask you, the discussion about digital transportation is not new. So I would like to ask you, starting with Ronald, which parts of the industry you see moving towards the right direction, or maybe which parts of the industry are moving towards the right direction, which parts are stuck, and why? Or to put it in another sense, which of these sectors, it could be the ports, it could be the ships, it could be specific segments, you see having, let's say, a biggest ROI or a shorter payback in terms of real life gains and benefits out of this digitization? I would like to ask you, not necessarily to take the crystal ball, but give me your thoughts. How do you see the industry moving forward? Ronald. Ronald, you have to unmute.
So thanks for your intro. Yeah, we came a long way since the late 90s, as you said, and I'm very happy that it all starts to come together. We still have a lot of satellites coming and being launched because we just see that we unleashed digitalization about 2-3 years ago, and it accelerates every year again. So we keep on building, buying, and deploying new satellites, including the polar regions. They are coming as well. But if you ask me where does it go the fastest, I think what we saw over the last year. I don't think I can mention a segment or a portion of the industry that goes faster as the others. In the beginning, I thought, well, the merchant marine industry would be the most resilient during the pandemic, and that, of course, we saw the passengers business fall away because of the travel restrictions, and we had a couple of months of almost negative oil prices. So I was very worried about the offshore industry as well. But basically, I see now that all these sectors are taking measures. So even in offshore and even in passengers now, we see that measures are being taken. And on the passenger side, you see measures are being taken for their return. And in offshore, you see measures are being taken for their continued existence. I don't see that the offshore vessels are doing less on digitalization at all. But what they do have in common is that they take more initiatives for the crew, as I hinted in my presentation. And I think where it goes the fastest is there where the parties are having that realization to absolutely split their traffic. And I was very happy with Stavros' presentation, actually, because there it shows, right, that what separation of purposes can do, where you are splitting the purpose between management and monitoring and crew and IoT, and there where vessels are under such a regime, you see that digitalization goes fastest. But I can't say that tankers or containers or bulk carriers, because they all have their own pace, but I cannot hint at an industry where they are not picking up in digitalization. So that's what I see.
Okay, thank you. George, your views?
Let me unmute myself. I would like to, first of all, I'd like to start by sharing the same view with Ronald. What we've seen is that initially the expectation was that we would see a peak in the interest on the marine side. But on the offshore side, I think that we have seen an equal level of interest, if not at some point more accelerated, to be honest with you. And you really have to look at the drivers. What is driving this transition? How do we achieve what we call the digital transformation of the industry and of particular companies? I remember speaking to Panos during that Posidonia exhibition that Panos mentioned several years ago. And we were exchanging views on how exciting was that year about the interest on digitalization. It kind of slowed down, and I will have to agree, but it is now picking up again rapidly. There are drivers, we have to be honest, and regulations or that emerging landscape that we described earlier create those environmental, let's say, conditions so that you have drivers that drive this transition. And we have seen that starting with some tools that provide the necessary monitoring of your KPIs will actually help the companies in their first steps of the digital transformation. So, which are the first movers? At this stage, I would say that the segments are more or less moving at the same pace. And I'd like to emphasize the fact that the offshore is not lagging behind. In fact, in many cases, we have seen the offshore stepping ahead, which was a very positive surprise since last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you sorry to interrupt there. If you have to point in one direction in these times, then you see that there is a slowdown in new vessels in general, right? As an outcome of this pandemic. And if there's one group of stakeholders that are desperately stepping forward to generate more recurring revenues for their business than anything else, it is everyone who provides hardware. Because whether it is VDRs or bridge equipment or anything that goes on a vessel, even the shipyards and the engine manufacturers, they're all looking to recurring revenues in times when the shipbuilding is slowing. And so there you see an accelerated push in anything virtual and measuring and IoT and management and monitoring, which is helping us, by the way, in the industry. But there I see a larger push than any time before, probably because of the slowing down of the building of vessels.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, your views?
Thank you, Mr. Plevrakis. Yeah, I'm tempted to say what Panelist Ronald and George said, but let me give my reflections related to hull performance. We see key drivers here being obviously efficiency, so fuel savings, and obviously the regulatory aspect is a key driver. We see early movers being owner-operators who have an integrated business model. The ones that pay for the fuel at the end of the day, they have the incentives of these savings and also are seen as early movers and also have the willingness to invest. Where we see and have experienced, obviously with good exceptions, are where you have the charter owner complexity. So it's not necessarily driven by whoever has the maintenance cost of the vessel, things happening in dry docking, such as upgrading anti-fouling systems, moving into what we're now offering, advanced robotics and digitalization of the vessel when it comes to performance. But we see this changing now. We see this driven in many cases by owner of cargo. So big commodity traders, Trafigura, Cargill, Swiss Marine, and so forth, they are all pushing forward on sustainability and have started to measure the owners of the goods that they transport. So I believe this also holds the key to moving forward. Again, the pandemic, like it or not, has acted as a accelerator, a catalyst into a, let's call it, forced digitalization. Hence why we are sitting here now over Zoom and not spending time in beautiful Athens face to face, where I hope we will soon see each other again. Thank you.
I think we tend to agree that COVID acted as an accelerator. But I'm more keening into what Ronald said in his opening presentation, that more or less COVID, like every crisis, acts like a magnifying glass. So what it is over there, it magnifies. Yeah. It happens with all crises, not only with this pandemic, but if the ingredients were not there, we wouldn't have seen this, speed up. Again, I've said in the past, maybe a couple of months ago, speaking in one of our forums, imagine what would have happened if we had this pandemic in the early 90s. Nothing would have happened of what we see now. Why? Because we didn't have the technology back then. So I'm just saying that the industry was there, the technology was there, and then it acts as an accelerator. But we tend to say without the pandemic would have happened. It would have happened, but would have taken a little bit more time. This is, we have to also bear in mind. Vikrant, your thoughts?
Well, I think, yeah, please tell us.
Excuse me, just a minute. I have a different opinion on that. I believe that the technology was available and ready, but it was used in other sections and in other industries. I have worked, for example, and I have done research for aerospace industry, and we all know that, for example, platforms like the one that Ocean King has, for example, or data acquisition systems were available for space or aviation decades ago.
Fully agree, Stavros, fully agree. I'm just saying we didn't use it in the sector. This is what I'm saying. We didn't use it in the sector. I fully agree. I cannot agree more with you. Vikrant, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if I may say, necessity is the mother of invention. And the pandemic has actually put us into that stage where we see digitalization is more of a necessity than luxury. If I could compare pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, I think there is a change of mindset. It's not that these tools were not available. It's not that this notion was not there that they have to look into digitalization. But I think what post-pandemic did is that people actually went into it. And I think one of the key drivers also, it correlate very well with the EU MRV, DCA, these kind of regulatory requirements, MRV, and which one of my colleagues has said, decarbonization. I think that goes well because these tools were already available and they were matured. So we talk about fuel optimization, voyage optimization, or we talk about aligning the business with the remote auditing tools or remote maintenance. So I think the trend is more of scattered at this moment, led by different major market players based on their services focusing. But the question is it sustainable? Well, as we move forward post-pandemic, will it go like this? It'll go down, it'll go up. I think my assessment will be it'll go up because we have the statistics from Ronald. There is a heavy data downloading. There is definitely more connected ships. In the few years, we will see more like semi-autonomous ships, and this will stay. The next question is, do we have the right kind of data? Can we bank on those data? Can we use that data? And that's why these platforms have come into it. And very, very rightly pointed by Ronald and a couple of my colleagues, it's not about just data, it's more about platform, it's more about the tools which we are going to use. So that's the trend I see as we move forward from now.
Yeah. Stavros, your thoughts?
Well, I believe that, for example, the pandemic was the reason, not the cause. The technology was ready. And I believe that the cause always is the regulatory framework. I believe that after these recent regulations and the goal that all the organizations have, of course, all this coming from United Nations, that we need, for example, to go to total decarbonization at the end of the century, then all the parts of the industry, of the shipping industry, have to comply for that. For example, when we know that we have to reduce the CO2 emissions, me as an owner and technical manager of vessels, I will seek to find new technologies and new solutions. For example, ABS George will try to normalize everything and put a framework for our collaboration. Jotun, Ocean King, etc., Inmarsat will try, they will make research and development, and they will develop, design, and produce new products and services. So it's a chain. And of course, the charterers will have to optimize their operations. The trade route will change. We are all affected from that.
Okay, thank you. Panos, your views?
Thank you, Apostole. I think I would tend to agree certainly with what Roland and George said in the beginning of their presentations. The big issues are still the same. So, let's not defocus ourselves. And this is really, at the end of the day, the underlying factor which, in a way, drives, at the end of the day, drives evolution and change. Indeed, pandemic was an accelerator. It was not an enabler. It was just an accelerator, a catalyst of change, which is good, I think, but it was only a catalyst of change. So in terms of drivers, I think at the end of the day, it's reality that is the driver. Both on the supply side, more solutions are available. So technology is becoming more and more, let's say, broader, wider, but also deeper in what it can do. And also on the demand side, there's real need. Apart from regulation, apart from pandemic, there's real need to use these technologies, improve efficiencies, improve asset management, which in my view is really the next big thing of monitoring, not just the operational performance and improvement, but also the asset management itself, asset being anything from a pump to the whole vessel. Now, on the barriers side, if I may add to the drivers question, because they usually go hand in hand, if I were to answer this question 2 or 3 years ago, and in fact I was answering that question 2 or 3 years ago, I was saying that we needed to educate and train the industry, introduce all these new concepts to the operators and the benefits that they can gain. I think this is no longer needed. I think the pandemic has acted as did a better job for us in terms of educating the industry or forcing to some extent some of these technologies. So as I said, it's a question of now taking the first step. The technology is there. We don't have to look at the big picture and scare ourselves on how do we go about implementing it. As I said, choose the best or the most urgent or the closest to your DNA technology and start from there, the journey of digitalization.
Okay, thank you, Panos. Now, we will be running out of time, so I'll roll out the next and final question, actually. I would like to take a little bit of your crystal balls and I would like to ask for your wish list. So the question is, if you could change one thing within shipping that would have either an immediate or a profound impact in order to accelerate digital transformation, what would it be and why? So I'm just saying we couldn't have predicted a black swan event like the pandemic, but again, pandemic happened. It was a black swan event and it accelerated everything. So if you take out the pandemic, because as correctly as Panos pointed out, the pandemic educated the industry. And an educated industry will take an educated decision at the end of the day. So if you could change one thing to accelerate digital transformation, what would it be that thing? Ronald, your thoughts, please make it a minute because we have to conclude the panel. Thank you. Ronald.
Okay. I'll be very quick. Of course, I like to the pandemic to end as soon as we can, right? And get our freedom back in all aspects. But if I wish one thing, it is that we take the learnings from this pandemic and not step back into our old habits once this is done. We should continue to do what we do today and reap the benefits of it. Because if we all eventually start falling back and say, okay, we got our freedom back, we move back to where we started the pandemic before that, then we lost all the momentum and the benefits that we got. So let's take the learnings, and a part of what we see as pandemic reality will hopefully stay with us after the pandemic as well. That's what I wish for.
Yeah. George?
One of the things that actually emerged during the last year after the pandemic and in view of the challenges that decarbonization brings and will bring is the fact that the industry started the stakeholders of the industry started working a bit closer together. And if we need to meet our goals on the decarbonization side and improve the tools that we need that will help us in that journey, in that sustainability journey. In decarbonization, it's just one part of that. I also heard my co-panelists mention the human aspect of that, the other environmental aspects of sustainability. So we're talking about a broader spectrum. If we need to arrive at that point of excellence, then we need to accelerate this kind of collaboration and synergetic environment that has started during the last year being more and more prominent. So if I could just wish for something, is that this can also continue, get more accelerated. We have more standardization, we have more uniformity, we have more close collaboration and synergy, so that we can work towards something more efficient and effective in the future.
Okay, Tom?
Thank you. So if there's one thing which I would, let's say, personally change, that would be the implementation of a widespread adaptation of measurability. I believe measurability holds the key here. If the return on an investment can't be measured, it has little or no value. So I believe key here is measurability. Many are there, many are quite good at this, but there's a huge bulk of our industry which is lacking behind, and this is key in terms of ensuring transparency and also the let's say return of investment of these efficiency improving measures which are being implemented on a day-to-day basis on vessels. Thank you.
Captain Vikrant?
I think one thing I will like is post-pandemic actually, in my opinion, accelerated digitalization at least by 3 to 4 years. What we have achieved in the last few months, we could have done without pandemic, maybe in the next 3-4 years. So what I see from here, maybe we will see in the near future, digital twin and decarbonization are getting merged. And we will see more of prescriptive analytics, where we have scenario-based situation where exactly we know in the virtual model what is going to be the next future. So this is what I see as we move forward from here.
Okay, Stavros?
Well, I believe that the pandemic was the total accelerator. All the other drivers are not too big and with so big impact as this one, but assuming that we didn't have the pandemic, I believe that the main two drivers would be the increase of the competitiveness by offering better services, better products, so we would have a better, a better economic chain. And the second one that has been already mentioned is all the environmental framework, the regulations about the decarbonization, and not only that, not only for the air pollutants, but also for the reduction, for example, of the underwater noise, or the recycling, and of course, the reduction of water wastes, etc.
Okay, and Panos?
I'll speak again from the ship operator perspective, in the sense that, there are other parts of the digital shipping, let's say, ecosystem that would have a different accelerator and like the digital ports, digital class, etc. That's a different story. But speaking from a ship operator perspective, I think I will play Roland's card, to be honest. I think if I were to wish for one thing to evolve faster and quicker, I would say I would play the silent and critical player of connectivity. I think the more online a vessel is, the more benefit we can start gaining. In parallel to that, technology is coming up with solutions. Regulations are, forcing us to move in a certain way. But we need that layer of connectivity to evolve as quickly as possible. It has always, in other industries, acted as a growth driver, if you like. So I'm I'm quite convinced that this is going to be the case as well and in fact we've seen it already being the case of driving growth. So the more online our vessels are, the more benefit we can start gaining.
I would like to thank you all. Just some food for thought for those of you who are watching this session. I think we should be learning from other industries as well, because my personal view is that the industry, our industry now, is at the crossroads where, for example, the mobile telephone industry was back in 2006, 2007, 2008, and the Nokia CEO said at some press conference after Nokia sold out for pennies for a dollar in Microsoft, that we wouldn't have expected these three different sectors, the media, the devices, and the connectivity, to merge in one sector. So they couldn't have predicted that. I think, because Vikram said that, I think we're going to see more and more the digitalization and the decarbonization things moving into in tandem, let's say, as we move forward. So I think it's exciting times. I would like to thank you all. As I said at the beginning, without Inmarsat, without the connectivity, because that's the backbone, nothing of this would have happened. And we have to congratulate Inmarsat for the efforts, continued efforts over the course of the last 20 years, minimum. So, and I would like to thank you all, and trust we see you in one of our future events, and we'll keep you up to date with the postings and everything. Thank you all. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a nice
also.
day. Bye.